So, you want to start making video essays on your favorite media. Maybe there's a show, game, or franchise you've been researching that you're just really passionate about. You have so much you want to say, but can't get it all out in one conversation with your friends. You just need some way to organize your thoughts so you can put them all somewhere, you know? Well, as someone who's been making video essays on games for almost 4 years now, this is the best advice I can give you on what you should and shouldn't do. The do's and don'ts, if you will. A lot of my examples will be with video games, as that is what I have the most experience with. Firstly, let's go over 2 general video essay tips before I go into anything more specific. Feel free to use the timestamps below if you want to skip forward to more specific advice. So something you're going to realize very shortly after you really get into the video essay grind is that a lot of the stuff you learned about writing in high school or college is actually useful. Trust me, I didn't think I'd ever use anything I learned in my English classes, ever. I majored in comp sci. When I found out I couldn't get a job in said field, I was surprised how much I ended up falling back into that previously learned knowledge. Now, you're not going to use everything you learned in school. In high school, I was taught to always write in active voice, present tense, and in the third person. I'm not going to go into detail on why that isn't always necessary. I'll just cite a video here explaining it better than I ever could. The very basic fundamentals of essay writing though, such as having a powerful thesis, having an essay map, and remembering to use your points to reinstate your thesis are all simple things that even I can forget sometimes on occasion, but can really help you keep your video on track and not deviate from the topic too much. Speaking of your thesis, that's the next important thing to address. Hopefully your English teachers taught you this too. I was always taught to have a strong thesis. This is especially important in the YouTube environment, where grabbing people's attention within seconds of them seeing your video and getting them to click on it is the entire game. Oftentimes you'll find that your title will be your thesis. The point of the video will be made clear as soon as someone sees it, and they'll know what they're getting into. The video itself will support your title/thesis. Since your title is often going to be some iteration of your thesis statement, it's important that your title isn't flimsy. For example, if you want to make a video on why Final Fantasy X is immersive, go for something like how Final Fantasy X excels at immersion. Clear, straight to the point, but most importantly, confident. There will be times when you might second guess yourself and wonder, is this title too baity? Okay, listen, for every good title and thumbnail you see, there are thousands of other ones that end up getting ignored. If you want your video to get noticed, you gotta put your whole ass into it, and put the best possible version of your thesis out there. You don't earn anyone's interest by saying,
well, in my opinion, Persona 3 Reload makes certain design choices that contradict an important part of what defined the original game's identity, but I swear I don't hate it, please don't hurt me!
This is the most basic essay writing tip. When it comes to your thesis, declarative statements only. As long as it's clear and represents the point of the video accurately, it's not bait or deceitful. Fuck the haters. Okay, here's a tip for anyone looking to make retrospective type videos. Only summarize the plot where necessary. A very common beginner's trap is that people will summarize the entire story while simultaneously sorta commentating on certain plot points. Don't do this. While summarization will absolutely be necessary at some point in your video, it should only be used in service of your point. I've been doing long videos about long JRPGs for a while now, and believe me, it's harder to avoid plot dumping than you think. The key is not to avoid summarization altogether, but knowing how to spread and allocate it throughout your video. Generally speaking, you are not obligated to cover events of the story in the order they happened. Only bring them up when it's relevant. To use myself as an example, I made a 2-hour-long video on Persona 3. An 80+ hour game. Aside from giving a basic rundown of the premise, most of the story summarization is relegated to the character analyses. Now don't worry, I don't just summarize each character arc one after another. That's boring. Rather, the goal was to prove a point with each character, and only referencing parts of their arc when applicable. Again, the summarization has a purpose. It's purely there to strengthen my point. There's way more emphasis on what those specific moments mean for the character than focusing too much on the moments themselves. This is applicable to more than just character analysis. References to story events can be used to support explanation of themes and other ideas too. The point I'm trying to get across here is that plot summarization is only a tool to support your point, not the whole point itself. Most importantly, you do not need to include every plot point in the story. Only include what you absolutely need to prove your point, nothing more. Stop trying so hard to be objective. Obviously, you can support your critiques with objective facts, but the evaluation itself will always be subjective by nature. The goal of a media critique is not to prove that you're right, or prove the other side wrong. The point should be, here's my point, and here is why I feel that way. While it's important to keep our biases in check, we are all ultimately shaped by our biases and personal experiences. You can't entirely remove that from your critique. It wouldn't be your perspective at that point. It's what makes your video unique and what makes your content different from every other essay out there. Why would that be something you'd ever want to purge from your content? This is just my 2 cents, but I'm more interested in hearing where people's preferences and biases are rooted in, as it makes for more interesting conversation and does a lot more to help people understand your perspective a lot better. At the end of the day, I don't really think it matters if you're objectively right or not. If you've truly made a strong case for yourself, then it should pretty much speak for itself. Let people draw their own conclusions from there. I'm working on a video on my other channel going into further depth with this, with video game critique in particular. So, subscribe to both of my channels if you're interested in that. This tip is one that is applicable to any kind of video essay no matter what topic you're covering. Do research on the stuff you're talking about, even if you're just talking about a movie or a video game. Find interviews from directors, developers. Hell, if there's a documentary on the thing you want to talk about out there, get on that shit right now. Trust me, researching info on something you really care about is fulfilling. Not only that, but in the case of art, this can help you get into the mind of an artist and what their thought process behind one of their works was. What was the context in which the work was created? That can also have a huge influence on a work's meaning and message. This can go a long way in not only helping you appreciate your topic more, but also a good preventative measure from trapping yourself in an echo chamber of only your personal takeaway or interpretation of a work. And of course, always cite your sources. Preferably list them in order they're mentioned in the video. It doesn't have to be any sort of formal citation format. Just have the sources there. That's all people really care about. If at all. Do people even look at the description? This is a more general tip that can technically apply beyond the video essay genre, but it's definitely important for newcomers. This tip is one that trips up a lot of people when they first start out. In fact, a lot of newcomers, including myself at one point, will outright ignore this one out of stubbornness. Consistency. Generally speaking, you want all the topics you cover to be adjacent to each other. If you upload a video on the education system that gets 1 million views, and then upload a video on Seaman for the Sega Dreamcast right after that, yeah, I'm terribly sorry, but that's probably not gonna work out for you. That's not to say you can never diversify your content. That step in your journey just comes much later, and is honestly worth a separate video all on its own. You want to start off with topics that are all closely related to each other or appeal to the same type of crowd. If your audience likes your videos on anime, then don't start making videos on Cartoon Network shows. There is not nearly as much overlap there as you'd think. I speak from personal experience. I started off making videos on the Persona series, and the furthest I could ever diverge from that topic was its broader mother franchise, Megami Tensei. So, really not much changed at all. I had to come to terms with the fact that in order to grow my audience, I had to stick to that one thing for a while. It was frustrating at first, but here I am now. Almost 4 years later, I was finally able to upload something not strictly related to my usual thing, and came out with a satisfactory turnout. I grew an audience first, and then communicated with them asking about other topics to gauge their interest, then found common ground to invest in. It all comes down to patience and truly understanding your audience. Don't solely blame it all on the algorithm. Although it can be a bitch sometimes. Those are honestly the only concrete tips that I can give to any newcomers trying to get into the video essay sphere. Yeah, I know, the advice in this video is very basic. There's obviously a lot more to it than what I've shared with you here, but a lot of other things that go into a video either go into more of the filmmaking side of things, or really just come down to personal expression. That's one of the good things about using YouTube as your platform. Sure, there are things that are proven to work, but there are also so many other minuscule factors that can pile on top of each other that can't really be scientifically replicated. Sometimes one of those factors is just your own personal touch. It's really intimidating at first, trust me, I've been there. But once you make that first banger, the ideas will come rushing in, and you'll immediately warm up to it. So go. Get out there. Share your thoughts, your passions. Express yourself.